Super.
BS.
Oh, yeah, we're back again. You thought you got rid of us last week, but no, we returned for
You
more.
tried to cancel us. We didn't die.
And we got our friend Gerald Glassford back for the threequel, right? That's a term they use in podcasting now, right?
And
Or
in
do we-
Star Wars.
yeah, TM.
It's called more content. That's what we like to call it.
Oh, yeah.
Never a bad
Content heaven.
I'm also joined here by a little baby boy. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm lovable baby boy Brank. Back from the dead and ready to bake some bread. Oh, my boys. I'm super excited for all this good gaming news. There's been no games that have been closed down after 10 days. There's been no crazy fun things released. There's like nothing to talk about but good times all around. So no one ever predicted anything on this podcast about certain games.
Never. And I am the despised one, as I was named fresh out of my mother's womb.
Nice.
My
He who
Josh
shall be
is the
despised is what your name means in Latin. So Josh is he who shall be despised, and all shall despise him. There's two meanings for that name.
It's true. It's true. That's in Latin, if it's roughly translated. All right. Well, Branky Poo, I know that you're the world's #1 Sonic the Hedgehog fan, and as I was perusing for gaming news, I came across a list of all of the Sonic the Hedgehog games ever made, and I want to ask you this question: can you name 25 of them off the top of your head?
What? That is a lot, and that will take up the whole podcast. But just to get this ball rolling as a quick icebreaker, I'll do some quickies for you. 1, Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which I think is called, no, that's Sonic Adventure is different. So Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic Spinball, Sonic Colors, Sonic Forces, Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic, I already said Spinball. That Sonic RPG, Sonic Dark Forces. Did I already say that? No, I said Sonic Forces, which is different from Dark Forces, I want to say, or the Dark Brotherhood. Dark Brotherhood was the BioWare RPG. Sonic CD, Sonic 3D, Sonic
3D Blast. Get the title right,
Oh,
please.
I'm sorry. One of my favorites was Sonic Racing. I don't know if you guys ever played that one back in the day on Sega Saturn, but the song "Can You Feel the Sunshine" is one of the best songs ever. I don't know why we're doing this, but yes, I probably could keep going.
That was pretty
we'll
close.
stop there.
That was
There
pretty
is
close. All right. You passed, sir. You are a true gamer.
25.
I was just testing your mettle here.
How many are there? Are there like 70 games? Are there 70
there are
Sonic games? I imagine there's a lot.
215 Sonic games.
Well, of course, and you own all of them. Original men, right?
One copy of each. Yes. It's graded on a shelf. It's my Sonic shrine. All right, so let's just jump right into this Concord.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about
Nothing
Concord.
to talk about Concord. It's just been perfect.
Game was pulled. Sorry, guys, that's not baby boy Brank crying. That's actually my my baby girl crying.
I actually am really good at baby sounds. One thing I've never done on this podcast before is I sound exactly like a baby. So if you hear me crying, that's actually me just practicing for my bits.
She's crying for Concord because she won't ever get a chance to play it.
I don't think she occasionally, but yes, yeah, she will never. What are you talking about? You own every copy there is, Gerald. You are excited for bringing that game back.
Yes, I do. In fact, I'll get it right now.
Those of you not watching, he has a wrapped copy of Concord in his hands.
I'm hoping this goes. I don't even know how you're hoping this goes, but I'm hoping it goes however you hope it goes for you.
I am. I'll be clear. As I talked to Josh on the Cosmos yesterday, I'm gambling on it. It's speculation. I mean, I talked to Josh 2 days before they made the move to cancel it when I was at a Target. Should I do it? And like, let's wait and see. And when they announced it, I immediately, bam, go to Walmart. And it was so funny because I told Josh, because he said he checked the Walmart and it already sold out. I checked the Walmart app that night after I bought it, and they said over 1,000. The Walmart app tells you a lot, and the Walmart app said over 1,000 sold in 24 hours, which if you base it by the numbers, that's almost 1/25 of what they've sold for the entire allotment of games. So they're flooded right now on eBay, but I'm going to hold on to it, sit tight, and then if it stays over $100, I'm going to do what Jenks told me to do and get it graded.
I went on Target. I searched for Concord. I only got jelly, so I mean, you're in a good place, man. There's only jelly Concords nowadays. They won the IP lawsuit.
Well, they're the answer to a trivia question. Who is the only department store chain or retail chain to actually advertise Concord ahead of time? And it was Target. That's how I knew Concord was coming out, was that I saw on the internet their flyer for the week that they had put, whatever they put in
every once in a while,
and it said it was coming out Friday. That's how I knew it was coming out that week.
I think the thing you guys are forgetting is Concord doesn't need any type of advertisement. It's got millions of players, and it's the most popular game on Sony PlayStation 5. It didn't need to be advertised on Walmart and Amazon. We saw how it worked out, guys. Sony knew no advertisement needed.
Everybody loved it. Yeah.
Banger immediately. The reviews will speak for themselves. Don't ever even talk about it before it comes out, even though it's been 8 years in the making.
Yeah, it's not like not like there were anything going on like, I don't know, little game show in Europe that has about 300,000 people attending it. Don't want to advertise it there or anything like that.
No, don't talk about it there. Don't talk about it anywhere, honestly. Just spend your $100 million to make it in your 8 years and then release it and know that the good work will be done.
So okay, Brank, have you ever seen the movie Elizabethtown with Orlando Bloom?
Every night of the week. No, I've never seen Elizabethtown.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this has Orlando Bloom and Kirsten Dunst is in.
Is that like the Garden State ripoff? Because that's what it seems like.
It kind of is, yeah, but it takes place in the South. But anyways, this movie, this is going to relate to Concord. The movie opens up. Orlando Bloom created a shoe that was supposed to like revolutionize the shoe industry, and that shoe ended up like causing the shoe industry to crash because it's so bad. And he arrives at work, and Alec Baldwin is his boss, and he goes, he tells him that he has to go in front of the press, and he goes, and remember, this is your baby. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, this is exactly the guy that made Concord. This is that blog post. Sony was like, remember, this is your baby. And they just threw him to the wolves. And now they're saying it's not going to get, the odds are high that it's not going to get re-released as like a free-to-play.
I mean, would you re-release it? I mean, it has like the stink of the worst game ever. It lasted, I thought originally, what was it called? Crucible lasted a short time. No, I guess this is actually the shortest a game has ever come out and been unreleased. Like we've never seen 10 games.
Did we do the one like last year? We covered it, Josh. Was it like the day before or the day after? But I
think the day after still even lasted 2 weeks. Let me see how long that was. I know it was also a quick turnaround before when it closed down. But...
And it didn't have the kind of budget, and it had a lot of problems financing behind the scenes. I think I remember that as well. So, but I mean, this was what 6 to 8 years of development time, and maybe reportedly up to $200 million in regards to Concord. So the day before.
The day before, and it came out for 45 days. Like, even though it was early access, it was out for 45 days. This is the first one that 14 days was the literal whole runtime. 10 days after it released was the announcement.
Absolutely insane. So I'm looking at it. So 25, they're estimating that Concord sold around 25,000 units.
That's
and I think there was 30 to 40,000 units in production at the time that it got shut down. So
that's sad for indie games, right? When I see an indie game studio and it's not one person and it says 25,000 copies sold, I always hope it's that person's hobby, right? Because it just means they're not gonna be able to make a ton of money. This is a AAA. I mean, some people could argue Sony might be a quadruple A studio, if you want to call it that, with the amount of money they put behind all of their games. This is mind-blowing that all of these decisions were made. I mean, we discussed it, I think, maybe before it came out or right after it came out. The idea of like, why sell it for $40 when every other game is free to play?
Helldivers 2.
Yeah, well, Helldivers 2, that there's less co-op shooters that are free to play. There are some, I agree with you, but it's not like the unanimous thing. I can't think of a lot of PvP shooters that are coming out anymore that aren't free to play, right? Like I actually honestly, besides Halo and Call of Duty, and Halo 8 even released the PvP free, like I can't think of anyone.
Well, the
doing
hero
multiplayer
shooters are
shooters.
just a huge glut in the marketplace now. I mean,
But
we talked about Josh and I talked about it yesterday, where
With
we're
Deadlocked.
yeah. Well, Deadlocked is now out in limited release as far as if
Yeah.
you get invites from Valve, and you've got the Marvel one coming up, and you've
Marvel
got
Rivals,
of course,
yep.
yeah. It's just there's a ton Overwatch, and there's just a ton of them out, and this was just like a meh. It wasn't
care.
terrible.
I heard it was fun. That's what
Meh.
people said. Yeah.
Meh for the
It-
most
it
part, and
doesn't-
meh doesn't work for $200 million.
No.
Right, but it also doesn't make sense that they wouldn't do something with this game. Make it a free to play game with like
So
loot,
much money.
some like loot features in it, because it seems like it's kind of a dumb move. It was a dumb move to make the game, because we're like, oh, let's make a game like Overwatch, when people just go play Overwatch. It's not broke, don't fix it. But they poured so much money into this, it wouldn't make sense for them not to re-release it in some form and try to make some money off of it, whether that's
a bad word.
skins.
Yeah, it's the stink is high. But I mean, if it were me and I spent the money that they spent, this is even going to cost more money. But I would just make a first-person shooter narrative game, get rid of half of the characters that nobody cares about, focus on like the thing that they showed us in the original trailer that made it kind of look interesting, right? Like the story, the Guardians of the Galaxy like story. A lot of people like that. It's a fun story. It's the rogues in space, right? Like it's not a bad thing. Yeah, we've seen it before. I'm sure people are like, "Oh, that's cringe doing the same thing." Whatever, who cares? But you already spent all this money. You should do something. Don't make another. I mean, PvP only is wild, especially after we've seen juggernauts like Halo Infinite be brought to their knees this generation, right? Like it still is around and has come back, but man, that was a lesson in like huge highs and low lows, right?
Super low, yeah.
Well, what if they did this? Because they supposedly have a year's of backstock worth of cutscenes, because the gimmick was that with that game, that each week they're gonna about a 2 or 3 minute cutscene each and every week. So what if you just re-released it and it was just all cutscenes? There you go.
I like that idea as a game. Yeah, you just
cutscenes the game.
Just keep your secret levels episode and just make it the cutscenes from the game, the ones that no one's gonna see now. I mean, real talk, they're probably gonna do what Warner Brothers and everyone else is doing. They're gonna cancel it and get the tax write-off. Yeah, because this is just, I mean, we discussed it earlier. I don't have a lot of skin in the game about the character models, but people say they're just generic and boring and there's no one really to like. So free to play doesn't work because you make all your money off skins. People have to want to be those characters, right? If you're not making characters that people want to play as, they're not going to buy they're not going to buy the skins, right? And from what I heard, a lot of people just thought the character designs were boring and whatever. There's tons of criticism leveraged against them on every side of political spectrum I've seen. But the game itself, I mean, I don't ever see it coming back. If they try to do free to play a year later, what does that even look like? Right? Yeah. Like, oh, hey, here's this game none of you liked. Only 1,000 people played our free beta, but now we're going to try to make it free to play and we're somehow going to get 1 million players. Like, no, it's dead. It will always be a crazy one.
So what happens now to the upcoming, because as far as games as a first service games that Sony was so infatuated on it, the list was like a dozen at one time. Now
Fair Games,
Fair Games and Marathon come to mind. What happens now?
Didn't Marathon have a single player component to it though?
The old Marathon.
Yes.
This was not. This one was supposed to be like a survival shooter, like Escape from Zarkov or whatever. I think it's Escape from Zarkov. Escape from Zarkov.
A spiritual successor to the original Marathon. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be that where like you go and there's enemies there, plus there's PvE like in bots in the environment, and you loot characters, and if you escape, you get to keep your stuff. And if you don't, that's why I had heard the gameplay was based around. But from what I've read recently, is Bungie's is like a lot of internal turmoil, and that's why they're letting people go. And Marathon's not in the best of shape. Fair Games, we've only seen that one trailer that no one liked from last year. Doesn't seem like it's doing well. That's from that studio. I think her name is Jade Raymond. She used to work for Ubisoft years ago.
She's worked all over the place.
But she hasn't released a game in a long time. She keeps getting behind studios, and I don't feel like the games that she keeps working on are coming out. Not putting blame on her, but I just find it very interesting.
What was the system? The Google system that came.
Stadia. Yeah, she was part of that. Yeah. She got hired there. She reminds me a lot of Amy Hennig, right? Like Amy Hennig was that writer from Naughty Dog that everyone talks about how good she was, and she kept getting put on these games that all got canceled. So it became like a thing where it's like if Amy Hennig's writing something, I think she's right now working on the Black Panther game
and the Black Panther Captain America game.
Yes, yeah. And right now
really
it's like
good, by the way.
It does look good, but I just, with everything that's happened to her, I'm like, is it ever going to come out? All of the games she gets behind get canceled. So sad for her. But yeah, I think Sony right now, especially with a new president, CEO, I actually don't know what we call Herman Hulst, but whatever he is, the guy who took over for Jim Ryan.
The guy who said yes to Concord.
Yeah, the guy who said yes to Concord. Jim Ryan, Concord himself. With Herman Hulst taking over, it's like, does he want to waste a ton of money too? Right? Like, do they all want to like throw money down the toilet for the thing that Sony's never been known to do well at, especially when it's like, what really is the loss? Like, they're going against Call of Duty. Guess what? Call of Duty's on their console. So what, they only get 30%. That's the bad part. They were only getting 30% before.
Like, they probably release this and they're like, now we're gonna let Microsoft pay to have it on their console.
Yeah, that was Concord. They're like, man, let's get them. We'll make the game that everyone wants to play, so Microsoft pays us 30%. Said no one ever. No, I mean, Concord is still to this day, like I almost like eat up all the Concord news I hear just because it's so fascinating. I can't even imagine this big of a swing and a miss. Like everything before that people have talked about, the Batgirl movie, the Looney Tunes, none of them cost as much as this did and had such a crazy go about it, right? So I just don't know. This is a weird one.
All right, so before we leave the topic of Concord behind, let's go over just to give Gerald here some hope for the investment.
$1 million.
The
$1 million.
Today's sold listings on eBay for Concord. You ready? There's
$5.
4 of them right now. Okay, and here's what they sold for. Number 1, $99.85.
Nice. Big eyes.
Number 2, yes, $105.74.
Okay, that's good.
Number 3, $110.83.
Nice.
And the last one here is $114.99.
Who are the crazy people buying these? Sorry, Gerald, I didn't mean to cut you off, but who are the crazy people buying these?
I don't know. There's a lot of bids. Like this one here has 11 bids, and let's see if we go further back. Like there's some. What was it? What day did it get canceled on? What was the date for that? Y'all remember?
It was 10 days after it came out.
It was a week ago today.
So that would be the 9th. That would be the 2nd. So let's go.
Yeah, and the last date it was up available on the servers was the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Price charting just put a value on it. So as far as my copy is $110 right now. As far as
that's so crazy. That is so insane.
They had their hands off for days. I've been checking it every day. It's like blank Concord. Blank. They didn't want to touch it. Now that I guess, like you said, they're looking at the eBay prices and seeing what's going on.
Well, it's the same thing with Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. Like that one, they stopped producing it, and all of a sudden the price of it jumped on eBay. Except it wasn't a canceled game. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. I don't see anything with over 20 bids on it, but I mean, people are buying it.
And I was
gonna say I asked Josh this, but I wanted to hear your thoughts, Frank. Will this become the rarest game in this generation?
Yeah, I mean, unless someone else somehow releases. The hard part is there are probably more copies of this than those games we spoke about last week, like Limited Run, I Am 8-Bit, all those the games, right? But is there going to be anything that's this sought after? I don't think so. Because there are people who will get full first-party Sony collections. There are those people, right? They'll get every Nintendo game that comes out. If they have to have Concord, then they have to pay a premium now. And I don't see Concord 1 ever releasing physically ever again. even if they somehow bring it back free to play, I'll be amazed, one, if your disc works, because why would it? And two, if they're ever going to put it back out. Nobody really does that. It's very rare. They put a box in code if they want to give like skins. The one interesting thing that I was curious about is, Gerald, did you get one of those controllers? Because it seems like those are even worth more.
Those, yeah, because they start out $129.99 regular retail, and
no, they were $89. I just looked on PlayStations. They were $84.99 originally.
Really? Because
yes,
sold on eBay today.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they're going for 300 plus. It seems like
I see right now 389. Oh, okay. So they must have gone to 129 like initially, yeah, and then gone well over there. Price charting has it now 249 as the base price right now as far as the value. But
so do you think these prices are going to hold? Like, do you think there's a ceiling and it's going to collapse here eventually?
Like they all do. We talked about this yesterday, Josh, and as far as it's like stock speculation. And you know how they skyrocketed in 2020, 2021, the values of it, they kind of petered off, especially the higher end games, they kind of peter off, but they still have great value. It's what, about $100 when you're talking about if you go to CGC or the other one of the three entities that you send it in for grading. So that's what I'm basing it off of. So if the value goes to $200, that's when I start to make a profit if I decide to resell it, because I've spent 40 on the game, and you have to spend about $100, with one of those entities to get it graded, because you're including shipping in that.
Yeah.
So it has to be at least $140 in order for me to start thinking about grading, because I do want to go ahead and grade, because I think I have a pretty good copy of it. But yeah, the value of it, I don't expect it to go skyrocketing, but if it does go over 200 at some point in time in the next couple of years, I think then you can consider it as the most valuable game from this generation.
It just depends on how many collectors there are and how many people want to be part of like history, nostalgia, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, I don't know how many physical games are sold, period, anymore, right? Especially with the modern consoles. So, if there are low thousands of people buying PlayStation 5 games, which I'm sure it's more than that, it's probably in the low millions, but low thousands who actually are like trying to buy every game or buy every Sony first party, or they're not just buying whatever they want to buy randomly when they walk into a store, right? If there are low thousands, then the likelihood of it hitting some extreme number is pretty bad, right? Because there's going to be at least 30,000 or 40,000 copies out there. You guys said there were 25,000 sold, and then they sold whatever the remaining stock is already, because you can't get it anywhere anymore.
Yeah. And it was only on the first printing. They never asked for more. So
so it could potentially. It just depends on that market. I'd be so interested to know how many people are buying physical this generation. I bet it's a higher number than I would imagine, but I still bet the amount who are like actually going all in, the people who game a lot, be surprised if it's over 20%. I'd be amazed if it's over 20% that's buying everything.
I wonder.
Physical.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, because I think about it in the same vein as like, it's all psychological thing too. Like, look at when they said, whoever it was during COVID was like, oh, there's a shortage of toilet paper, and all of a sudden people are selling out of toilet paper. Like, we're at this point where people are like, they're not going to be making physical media anymore, and now I'm wondering if this is creating new waves of people wanting to collecting physical media before it goes away.
I mean, it's a possibility. I do think with the toilet paper thing, that the only difference between that is, one, the world was very uncertain, and two, I don't think a lot of people wanted to be without toilet paper, right? Like, I know for me, I was one of those people who I didn't wait in line at Costco, but I did try to find it early on because we had like some left, and I was like, if this becomes harder to find, like, I'll be so frustrated. I never paid a premium. I just waited till store had it.
Yeah.
But it was and honestly, that reminds me more of like the soap people. Do you remember the COVID soap story?
Yeah.
The hand sanitizer. Sorry, not soap, hand sanitizer, and they bought all of it, and then they got sued because they were not allowed to buy it. That reminds me more of that.
There are people selling it out of their garage.
Yes, yeah. This thing is just
marketplace, man. Yeah,
so unique, because like this entire story, I can't think of it ever happening again. Like, there were those Super Nintendo games that came out in ultra limited quantities because they either wouldn't sell well or the publishers didn't want to spend the money or whatever. but we've never seen this from a Nintendo, a Sony, I mean, Sega, Microsoft. I can't think of a single one unless it was intentional, releasing a low volume of a game and then being like, hey, we're not making any more of this because it didn't sell well. So, right, like the only times you think about that where it's common is like, oh, Fire Emblem Special Edition. Nintendo only made 800 of, or it was obviously more than that, right? But like they made 2,000 of them, and you're like, oh man, that's crazy. They only made 2,000, but it's a special edition, right? This is a regular game. This was supposed to be Call of Duty for PlayStation, essentially. They never got there, but that's what they wanted, right? The easy box copy you pay $40 for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
nuts.
I'm still interested. I mean, I don't want to derail this conversation, but there's a game I've been playing that's very popular and very fun, and also from Sony, and I am waiting to see if there's going to be a Concord character in that game. I'm assuming you guys know what game I'm talking about. I don't think they are.
I'm about to get there. First, I want to address, we have a comment in our from YouTube here from JSJ Talk saying Concord, Outlaws, Starfield are the most disappointing games this year so far. I
haven't played Outlaws yet. I have not played Outlaws, and the opinions are all over the place, so I can't say yes or not.
I haven't played Outlaws yet either. I have read, a lot of negative feedback about it.
I've also heard a lot of positive feedback about it.
Yeah, Frank, what are your thoughts? Have you jumped into this one yet?
Star Wars Outlaws?
Yeah.
Real quick, just so I'm hearing things correctly, JSJ said Concord and Star Wars Outlaws, or what were the games?
Concord, Outlaws, and Starfield.
The expansion.
Starfield came out. Oh, okay. Oh, which isn't out yet. But okay, yeah. Starfield came out last year, but maybe people are getting to it late. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in Outlaws. I think, I think we discussed this exact thing last week, but really what turned me off of a day one purchase was the insta-fail stealth missions, the ability to only have a single weapon. You can only pick up stuff and then drop it anytime you try to climb or do anything. The fact that, I mean, this company, massive, they had made the Division games, which is not some of my favorite Ubisoft stuff. They took out
too.
Oh yeah, they made the Avatar, which is the Far Cry one. I didn't play that one, but yeah, that's their other recent title. But otherwise, they were the Division team, and a lot of the things I had read pre-release were like, oh, there's no leveling up, which, yeah, you don't need leveling up, but they replaced it with the perk system, which is you do X amount of things and then you get a perk. I've never enjoyed that system. I will say it was just really disappointing because I thought the original trailers were so exciting. And I felt like the closer and closer I got, the more I felt like, oh, this is what is now a Ubisoft issue, right? Like a very common, oh, this is a Ubisoft game. I'm hoping when Assassin's Creed Shadows comes out in a couple months here, I'm not saying, oh, this is a Ubisoft game. Like, I don't need to play it.
It's funny though, because like Ubisoft doesn't make terrible games. They don't make great games, but they're not terrible. They have legs. They just, for some reason, have a hard time walking on them.
There's a few huge problems though, right? One, we all don't have infinite time and money. Those are two big problems, right? We can't just buy, I mean, there are people who can, and I at times have been stupid and done this, but most people can't just buy every single major $70 release. And even if you could, you don't have the time, right? It came out a week after Black Myth Wukong. So unless gaming is your full-time career, it's hard to get a 40-hour game in and then do another 25, 30, 40-hour game in. And if you're playing Concord 2, which no one was, but they're, playing that, right? You've got all these games coming out. Astrobot comes out a week later. So you got that issue. The other one is, hey, like if they make an okay game, does anyone need okay games anymore? We all have backlogs of 30, 40, 50 games we haven't touched. One of the ones that JSJ mentioned, Starfield. I actually like Starfield, but I didn't get very far because it takes a ton of time and you need to have a lot of time to play it. So a lot of Ubisoft games are doing that. And then the final thing, this was what I remembered, is Ubisoft is notorious for dropping the price of their games months, like sometimes weeks after the game releases.
Do you think that affects like day one sales because people
100%.
Just know?
100%. I have waited on multiple, only Ubisoft too. I have waited on multiple Assassin's Creed games to go from $70 for the game or $60 for the game to $60 for the game plus all the DLC, whatever their gold edition is.
Don't they have a subscription service too that you can actually play it now for $15? Right.
Yeah, you could do that. So a lot of the people were like way in. They were like, hey, I'll pay the $15. I don't know if that's accessible on PlayStation, Xbox. I know it's accessible on PC. I would imagine it's accessible on PlayStation, Xbox.
I just sign
but-
into Ubisoft, whatever their program is. When I played one of their games on Games Pass,
you have to do that. But okay, so I just checked, so we didn't have to like wonder about this. It is on Xbox and PC. I do not know if it's on.
Is it a tie-in with Game Pass or no?
No, that's the weird one. Remember, a lot of people thought they were gonna like buy Ubisoft and do that stuff.
Because of the overseas stuff. I know the overseas,
Yes.
like they have to publish it, I believe, on Ubisoft's platform because of the legal entanglements from the fallout from, when they were trying to get the
when they got Activision,
yeah,
and they had all those problems. Yeah. So yeah, it seems really difficult online to just actually figure out how to even get it on Xbox. It does seem like it's possible to get Ubisoft Premium. I don't know if it's on PlayStation. But regardless, so say you pay the $15, right? Which is a great way. If it's 22-hour game, you could pay $15 and rent it. I also don't think a lot of people care enough to even do that. Right. Like I know for me, like I don't even want to sign. Ubisoft probably has a free 7-day trial. Almost every place does. I can't guarantee it. A lot of them do. And it's like, or maybe they don't, because I haven't heard anybody say play it for 7 days. But and it's on Ubisoft Plus is also on PlayStation. Just so if anyone's wondering, you can do it on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC. But yeah, I don't think there's something great that's making me want to rush out and even do that. Is there something that's making you guys? I mean, it's you asked the question, but I could ask it just straight back to you. It's why don't you pay the $15 if you're into it?
I'm just waiting. I let my Game Pass subscription run out. I'm just waiting for December 9th because I want to play Indiana Jones. I was hyped. I'm as hyped up for that game as I was for Starfield.
Okay.
Because I really enjoy Bethesda games, but Starfield kind of let me down. It kind of like dragged in the beginning, and I just never went back to it. Maybe with Shattered Space, I will back, after I finish Indiana Jones. But Indiana Jones for me is what I'm waiting for, and that's when I get back into it because I have such a backlog of games and old games I want to play now that I bought that I haven't played because I was on Game Pass. So
yeah,
it's easy to get lost in that catalog too.
First thing, I want to go back to I've got the whole BioShock trilogy I bought for $10.
Yeah.
When am I ever going to get time to play it?
I never even got to the DLC for Infinite, which I've heard is great. The C, like the back where you go to the original BioShock.
Yeah, you gotta go back to Rapture. Yeah.
Yep. I've heard it's awesome. Never touched it. One of these days I'll have to get to it. Jank, are you gonna sign up for Ubisoft Plus?
I mean, probably not. Like I'm not in a position with my gaming time to be able to jump into anything.
Why would you don't look busy at all?
Yeah, you got nothing to do. I mean, if you're seeing him right now on a stream, if you're watching, he's holding a bag of popcorn in his hands, and he's been holding this popcorn for a long time.
Copies, yeah,
all of his Assassin's Creed copies wrapped up in swaddled clothes, and they're lying in his hands because he loves them so much. He kisses them every night before he goes to bed. But I think all of us have answered the real issue with Outlaws, right? It's not that it's a bad game. And then we answered the same question for Concord. It's not that it's a bad game. Games don't need to be bad anymore not to sell. It's just that they're not incredible because the problem is we've been spoiled and there are too many great to incredible games that are coming out at too quick of a... Did either of you play Baldur's Gate 3? Last year?
Yeah. No, that was one I kept wanting to play, and then it eventually just like slipped off my radar. So
I wish I had 100 hours to give to it too. I've heard it's incredible, but it's like that's what I'm talking about, right? One of the games that people said defines a generation or defines like gaming in general. People have said it's one of the greatest games ever made. And because I'm not super invested, I haven't turned it on yet. That's the problem with Outlaws, right? Like you have those games out there that most people don't have time to play. And those people who played that may have missed out on Tears of the Kingdom or Elden Ring or one of the other plethora of like crazy good games. I mean, even we've got 2 more weeks for a new Legend of Zelda game. I mean, it's insanity, or maybe it's 3, but it's insanity how many good games are coming out at the clip that they're coming out. It's just we even on a slow year like this, which everybody would say compared to the last couple of years is slower, it's still too many games for someone to play all of them.
Yeah, and we still don't know like what's slated to come out in the holiday season either. We know a few things, but There haven't been a lot of announcements as to what we can expect from the big three publishers here. So that's something I'm also looking forward to hearing about too.
I mean, you queued it up. I got to spoil this news thing real quick because it's just on my heart and my mind and my soul. But I mean, tomorrow they're announcing PS5 Pro. I mean, we all know that, right? The video leak that said it's going to be PS5 Pro. They're probably
not announcing that price hike for the controller, did they?
Yeah, I know, that was funny. They raised the price of the controller, didn't talk about it at all.
What it raised to?
I think
$5.
it's $5.
Oh.
I mean, in Japan, they raised the PlayStation 5 cost to what, $50 more than it was?
Yeah,
it's like insane.
This is the second price hike they've had in Japan for the PlayStation 5 too.
It's crazy I mean, again, a new historical thing. We've never seen console prices go up after launch. They generally go down. But yeah, I mean, with PS5 Pro, I mean, you're talking about already they probably won't, but they could announce more stuff for it, or they might announce that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth actually plays at 60 frames per second or looks good, right? So maybe people will go back and play that. But I mean, there's already all these great games out. Now they're announcing like another 550, 600, 650. We're not even sure what the price is yet. Probably around there because they just raised the price of the base console purchase, where it's like, are people going to make those purchasing decisions, right? Especially in a world where money is tight, this every dollar counts, and Ubisoft is not doing themselves favors by releasing games that are just not extraordinary, right? They had a long history of hey, we're making great games, we're making great games, we're making great games. They somehow switched from that to we're doing Call of Duty. And the problem is they didn't have the Call of Duty fan base. They had a good size fan base. It's not the Call of Duty team. It's not the millions.
Yeah, that's funny because Ubisoft, I think we've talked about this before, where they want their games to be the only games that you play all year. And I think that's the big problem. Whereas I'm fine. Everyone complains about paying, we used to complain in the 360 Xbox One era of paying $60 for a game that only took you from 6 to 12 hours, but I'm more okay with that, I think, than buying a game that takes me over 100 hours to play, because I'm never going to finish it, and then I'm going to fall off of it, much like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'm going to fall off of it, try to go back and play it again, not be able to get back into it. So in the end, it was ultimately a waste of money for me.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Did you ever play Valhalla, Gerald?
No, but I heard it from Josh so many times, because then he goes into his OCD. And then he has to talk about all the side.
Yeah.
I have to, Gerald, I hate this game and I love this game because I have to finish this. Yeah, somebody will give me a side quest and then somebody else will give me a side quest and then I have to finish all of it. So I felt very bad. I'm glad, though, that this one seems a little bit more centered, this upcoming one, with less of the side stuff and more focused on just trying to get you from point A to point Z, which I think, like we talked about, as far as not having that many spare hours in a week, we just don't have time to do 100, 150 hours like we did in our youth. So
yeah, and I think that Ubisoft does create games for people who are buying less games, right? I think Outlaws is, even though it's only 22 hours or whatever for the main campaign, I've heard it's probably 60 for completionist or 40 or whatever, right? It's a much bigger game if you're going to do everything the game has to offer. I think that's great, right? If your whole thing is I want bang for my buck, right? That's awesome. I do think, though, that becomes less enticing to the average gamer when you're in a world where there are so many free-to-play games. You can play Genshin Impact. You can play, those didn't exist in a AAA scale till the last 6 years, right? So that's where the Ubisoft, hey, I want to waste time, it's not as enticing as it once was.
All right, back to the comments here. JSJ commented in saying, we need a Switch 2 announcement soon. I made a prediction earlier this year that it was going to drop in November of this year, but I might be walking back on that now. What do you guys think?
It's not coming out till at least spring. But I would, and I was saying to JSJ, I think they should announce it during the Game Awards, but I don't think they want to because they want to do it on their own time. I was there for the Wii U announcement that they did at the Nokia Theater way back when. We drove all night from Las Vegas to get there, and everybody except for me, we were all way up at the stands, and everybody in my group was all asleep. They were were out through the entire thing, and I was just like, man, this Wii U might be worth something. Yeah.
It actually is kind of worth something because
Now
people
it is.
bought so few of them that they're actually
Yeah.
valuable. Yeah. So I, unlike the two of you, I do think that we're going to get a Switch 2 announcement probably as early as this month. So Nintendo has a history of doing Nintendo Directs in September. Their history really is September is kind of always the month they do a Direct. They've occasionally done them on either January or February. They normally do a early year one, and then they normally do a summer Direct, right? Those are the three that seem to come like clockwork. Occasionally, I feel like there's been a winter one, but I feel like nowadays they move to January, February.
Indie games usually, right, in the winter.
Yeah, I want to say there was 1 year, but it could be just an indie one that I'm forgetting. But yeah, so September's a Nintendo Direct. They announced, if I remember correctly, and it's been 7 years now, which is crazy to think about. Oh, actually, it's been 8 since this. They announced the Switch, I want to say in October of 2016. So I want to say they announced the Switch in October of 2016. And then they did, if you remember, the Switch presentation, where there was a physical live presentation in January of 2017. And they showed off some of the games. It was kind of like a boring show, but I mean, it was, they did this big thing, right? And they talked a lot about 1-2 Switch, which was super funny. And they released in March. Now we know the rumor is they're not releasing in March this year. It's coming after this fiscal year, right? So April, the earliest. So that could throw these things off. But I have like a little bit of a feeling that they don't want to mess with success, and they were really successful this time. So I could see them trying to pull another rabbit out of a hat, right? Like you're September, October, you do your big thing in the beginning of the year, you release in April, May. They could prove me wrong. They could do a fall release. That's historically when you release consoles, is near the holidays, get big sales. But hey, Switch sold like, I don't know, like bread. I don't know, whatever the most popular sales like.
Metaphor.
Yeah, I don't even know the metaphor for what a Switch sold like, because I can't think of many things that sold like that. I guess the Wii was the other one, but that was even less exciting. 2 years in, you could find a Wii anywhere you wanted to go. I feel like a Switch, it still was tricky to find. I mean, 2 years, much easier, but again, during COVID, they sold out. But yeah, I would love to see a Switch 2. I think the more interesting thing, right, is Switch was so exciting because it merged their handheld and their consoles, right? Like that was the first time where we were merging these two libraries. You didn't have to buy a 3DS and a Wii U. You could buy one thing and all the best games are coming there. You can play them, take them wherever you want. What is this? How is this going to stand against the Lenovo Legion Go or the Asus ROG Ally or the Steam Deck? Right? Like Steam Deck, when a Steam Deck 2
Xbox may have.
Xbox handheld. Because the truth is, we're getting back to the Nintendo that we had years ago, where people are only buying it for first-party games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad thing. Their games are incredible. I'll definitely buy whatever Nintendo releases because their games are that good. But am I as excited as I was for the Switch? Not necessarily, right? I've got a portable PC. Right?
Depending on what it does. Yeah, but so I was talking to one of my students today was talking to me about the Switch 2, and he said that somewhere he read that it's supposed to have they said it'll have the processing power of the PlayStation 4. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, you know what? Regardless of that, like people will buy it. Like the Nintendo could put a screen on a shoe and sell it, and people would still want it.
They're always behind power-wise.
Yeah.
The Wii, look at and how sensational that was. But when you compared it to the 360 and the PS3, under the hood, it was nowhere near. But it didn't matter because they had something that was so appealing in regards to the gameplay.
Yeah.
But just to push back real quick on that comment, though, Josh, is while I agree that it doesn't technically need to be very powerful, it needs to present a reason to buy it, right? So if there is no Zelda and there is no Mario near launch, I still think plenty of people will buy it. But what my biggest concern is, like I said, when they released the Switch, we had nothing similar. You could the closest you could argue is maybe a tablet, right? Like, or a laptop. There was nothing like the Switch. Now we're in a different world. So I'm curious what they're going to show. And if the people who are like, oh, I want a portable. I mean, I knew so many people who don't even game who were like, hey, I'll buy this so I can take it on a plane. Right. Like, are those people going to come back? They didn't buy a Steam Deck. They don't play on their Switch anymore. Are they going to buy a Switch too? Right. They only bought it for Zelda because they're like, hey, I'll play it on a plane.
Yeah. It's the same thing though with people who are like, I love the Nintendo Wii because I can do all my motion gaming on here. Look, I got this board. I'm going to play Zumba and Wii Sports, and then Wii Fit. And eventually they were like, oh man, that was fun for like a month, but I really don't like the concept of moving around while I'm playing video games. Yeah. So Nintendo is good at putting out these like quick gimmicks, you know, that eventually phase out. But by the time they phase out, right. But by the time all that phases out, they've already made a butt ton of money off of everybody.
Warrior Shake It, man. That was
our friend, Doug and Nicole at Retro Cine Games, Josh. You know, there's always going to be a corner when there's just nothing but a stack of Wii Fit boards that they can never get rid of.
It's the same thing with all used game stores, though. They're everywhere. It's a whole graveyard of them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, let me say one. Let me add one thing: is that if Xbox does bring on a handheld, they got to do it right and they got to promote it right. Because if they do, the concept of not only you be able to have a powerful handheld that's going to play your entire Game Pass library there, but if they communicate it that you can also take it over to your big screen with or without the handheld and play Game Pass on there, or right behind me, grab your Amazon Fire Stick and be able to go ahead and do it there as well. They have to communicate that so much better, because if they did, the possibilities there are, I don't want to say endless, but at least a lot more than what PlayStation or Nintendo can offer.
If there was a function on this Xbox handheld that allowed me to download games temporarily, at least from Games Pass, and let me play on the go, I would probably be more down to buy that than
it's going to be cloud reliant, though.
If it was just cloud reliant.
If it's cloud reliant, that's no good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we already have those. There was I forgot when it came out, maybe a year or two ago. There was some, who was it? Not NVIDIA. One of the companies came out with a cloud portable, and it had no ability to download any games on it. And I couldn't even tell you the name. It came out for, I want to say $250. Nobody's talked about it since. If it sold 1 million copies, I'd be amazed.
It's that technology is the same thing Stadia was relying on, right? It's like it's so unreliable.
Should I go look for that on eBay too? Next to my Concord?
There you go. Your next purchase, on the shelf.
It was called the Logitech G Cloud. There it is. And it was designed with like Game Pass and all the other things in mind. So it's just like, but it came out, it looked fine, but it had no ability to download anything. So I think if Xbox makes that decision, they're doing the worst thing they could. It would be better to just download the game and have them be like a Series S quality or lower, and give us those options, right? And you'd be like, hey, you can play it with the quality of slightly lower than Series S, or you can play it off the cloud and it'll look this great, blah, blah, blah. Everybody who likes gaming is going to choose to download it. Like, it's just, the cloud is just not there yet.
It's not, it is, it's quite shaky at this point.
It's good, but it's just not, it's not there yet.
No.
I remember that one year, though. There was that one year I went to CES, and there was that one year everybody and their grandmother had an Android gaming device of some type, including like car stereo makers would have their own Android. It's like everybody just jumped on the bandwagon for like one year, and then by the next year, all gone.
Yeah. It is crazy because, Android is obviously the easiest one to make, or the easiest one to implement, because it's a lot more open source. It's owned by Google, and you see it everywhere. Obviously, Android phones are really popular, especially in third world countries and places where iPhones are way too overpriced. And it is funny to see Android have like kind of this also air about it, right? Like, a lot of people who have Android phones, they love them. They don't want to go to iPhones because they have all this customizability. But I will say there is like a weirdness to them, right? Where it's like, because so many makers make Android phones, Android tablets, Android everything's,
So
there's not a quality level, right?
yeah.
Like, that's what a Nintendo Switch is. That's why, like, the more and more portable gaming PCs that come out, the less I'm excited for the other, like, opportunities. Yeah, like I said, the Lenovo Legion and the ROG Ally, they're way stronger than the Steam Deck. But for me, I kind of stick a lot of times with, like, the Microsoft, the Steam, the PlayStation, Nintendo. Not because I don't like the other people entering the market. Obviously, those are very competent computer makers. They make laptops, PCs, all that stuff. But it's more like the Android, like, I would rather have a closed system in a lot of ways that I don't have to fiddle with all the time. That's what's always kept me out of, like, actual PC gaming, is just fiddling with everything all the time and wondering if my parts are good enough to play the game.
Have to constantly upgrade. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I understand that. I do. And like you said, the Android. I think Android's just an operating system, right?
Yes.
On the phone.
Yeah. But they have
Yeah.
tablets. They have like Samsung makes Android tablets, and there's lots of different phones and all that stuff.
All right. Hey, so I want to talk about Astrobot here. I spent some time with it. Brank, you spent some time with it. Gerald, you been watching videos or reading reviews. I know you don't have the
Concord's the only PlayStation 5 thing I have.
Gerald, you love your PlayStation 5. You talk about it every single episode.
I'll play it now.
He sold his PlayStation 5. He traded his PS5 actually in for that copy of Concord.
That was worth it. That was the best decision you ever made. $40 Concord for a brand new PS5, never been opened, somehow was modded, even though it wasn't open, to 2 terabyte
Best
SSD.
decision ever.
Well, I was waiting for the price to go down on the PlayStation 5. Man, that didn't age well.
I mean, I still think when the Pros announce tomorrow, I don't think they're going to be able to sell the originals for. I mean, they may be able to hold somewhat for a little bit, but they'll have to start doing sales more often. They can't have a higher capacity model and expect to sell both of them at full price. Maybe they can, but I don't think they will.
Let me ask you this. I once did pay $700 for a PlayStation 3 when it came out, the 60 gig.
I remember.
Would you guys, and I already know the answer for Josh because there's actually proof with Josh. He actually said it on the show. Would you pay $700 for a PlayStation console again?
Never. I didn't pay for the PS3 though. So I'm in a different boat. I remember almost buying into the zeitgeist, like thinking about going to the bank and pretty much taking all my money out to buy a PS3, but there were no games, right? And truly, what is the PS5?
Swordman and Lair.
Oh man, Lair, bro.
Your franchise is still producing today.
I gotta get that. What was it called? Not the DualSense, 6-axis. I gotta get that 6-axis Pro, man. Gotta play that Lair with the motion controls. Truthfully though, like, it's not worth it. Even like I am somebody who likes buying the mid-gen refreshes. I bought the Xbox One X. I had the PS4 Pro. I have the Switch OLED.
What about when GTA 6 comes out?
That's where it matters, right? Like, when we're starting to get to a point where they can tell me, hey, you want to play this and it's going to look like this on this, or it's going to be way better here. That's when they can sell to me. But right now, they've got nothing. I'm already halfway done with Astrobot, and that's on the original PS5. By the time the PS5 Pro releases, I'll be done with it. They have no other first-party games releasing for the rest of the year. I generally buy third-party on Xbox. Why would I buy an upgrade when I finished 7 Rebirth? That's the problem. They unless they're announcing this with a Last of Us 3 or Naughty Dog's Uncharted
if they're
5.
Gonna talk about any games tomorrow to release alongside it, or they're
I
gonna be
don't
like,
think so.
we got these Concord PS5 Pros.
That would be so great. A limited edition Concord PS5 Pro model.
I'm all over that one.
Yeah. Oh man, you and everybody. It would be like that one PlayStation 1. It wasn't a sneaker, was it? It was a PS4 model that was based after the PlayStation 1. It looked beautiful, but they released at like one of the showcases.
20th anniversary?
Yeah, they released at one of the showcases, and it was so cool, but it sold out immediately. So it looked like PS1.
That was a thing. That's awesome.
Oh, it's so cool. Like, I was so upset when I was like driving to work that day. I was like, man, I want to get this, but yeah, it sold out immediately. So Was impossible to get.
Okay, Astrobot. So, Brank, do you want me to give you my thoughts, or you want to
Sure.
give your?
No,
thoughts?
go ahead, because I've played a lot more of it. I want to hear what the dude who's only played World 1 thinks. Now, where are you at first?
Yeah, actually, I'm World 1. You know,
Okay.
I did the first 2 levels last night.
Okay.
I like it. You know,
Yeah.
it's more of the same of what the playroom was, but it's got. And I like it. Kind of feeds off the story of the last one, but it's still. Because I remember, I think we talked about this. How like I told you, I wish that it was a bit longer experience.
Yeah.
And this answered that question, you know, because all like most of the functions on the controls are the same, the gameplay is kind of the same, but they give you more objectives. Like you in this one, you have to find the robots hidden within the levels. Like I did the first one and I couldn't find one of them, I think, so I got to go back and replay it. But I don't know, it's a feels like a really nice callback to the old days of the PlayStation platformers, and this one is just it's fun. That's all I think to describe. It's just fun.
Yeah, I've heard it maliciously described as like a PlayStation advertisement, but truly I think it's more of a love letter than anything else. The way you find like they have these VIP bots, like these special bots that look like they're from different game characters. They don't ever say like, you know, I don't want to give away any of the ones. I'll give away the one that everyone knows. They don't have like Crash Bandicoot TM, right? It's like Twisty Marsupial, and it will have like some slogan, and it doesn't ever mention the name of the game. Like there are some that I'm actually going to go look up once I've seen them all, so I don't like spoil one, where it's a fun way of like honoring what, you know, is now 5 generations of a very big publisher that had at one point so many incredible games. It's hard to talk about Astrobot without wanting to spoil everything, because so much of it is like, oh, did you see this? Or did you see that? Did you find this? But as a game, it's fun. Is it Super Mario Odyssey? No. I heard some people say it's better than Super Mario Odyssey. No, it's not. It's not that type of game. It is a 3D platformer, not a 3D collectathon. You run to the end of the objectives. You find like your green coins. It's much more in common with Super Mario 3D World or Super Mario 3D Land than it does any of like the Mario 64, Odyssey, Galaxy games. Yeah. But it doesn't mean it's not fun. And there's some secrets hidden there. There are like, and this doesn't spoil anything because it's on the map. There are secret exits for levels that will take you to different places. And there's challenge levels that are, you know, I mean, I found them more annoying than challenging, because it was like, oh, okay, this thing does this, and I hit this
like
dumb button again.
Mario, you go down, you got secret things hidden beneath the ground or whatever.
Yeah, but there's so much heart and so much character, and it really kind of reinforces my thought recently where Team Asobi, which is the original creator of Ape Escape, they're probably my favorite PlayStation development studio, just because like, not that I don't love Sony Santa Monica and I like Naughty Dog, but they've all started making a similar game. And this is the team that just kind of makes whatever. I mean, hopefully it's not just an Astrobot team. It is right now. But they were the team that was making those like wacky games that we grew up with. The game where it was like, hey, I'm not going to make just a third-person open world stealth game or a third-person linear action game or a third-person whatever, right? RPG. It's like, hey, I'm going to make a platformer, and at one point you're going to turn into a ball and they're going to roll over spikes. And because there's motion stuff inside of it, you're going to feel in this area feels weird. So like, let me try to do a different thing.
Controller. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just a lot of neat stuff that I really think it feels like there was love and care put in a way that I haven't felt in a long time about like Sony games. Not that I don't think like the people make Ghost of Tsushima or Last of Us 2 or God of War love main games. I do think they do. I mean, I love Last of Us Part 2. I talked about that as a show. A game that most people hate, I think it's great. That story, I still think about that story today. I really even like God of War Ragnarok. Yeah, did it have a lot of problems? Is it as good as the first one in a lot of ways? No, but I actually had more fun playing it than the first one. I thought the gameplay was better.
Good, yeah. Yeah,
but it had slow moments and stuff. The Angrboda stuff, I still like can't even believe they put that in there, because it was like the boringest 2 hours of game I've had to sit through in a AAA game for a while. But long story short is this is just different. There is not a third person behind the shoulder section that I've come across yet. And even if they did, it would be a new and unique gameplay moment. And they throw so many of them at you. and it's so much fun, and it's so silly. The whole thing is trying to put a PS5 together. That's literally the story, the whole entire story plot. That's not a spoiler because you go around these worlds collecting the parts. That was kind of what Astro's Playroom did too. But it's neat to see somebody who cares about gaming and wants to do just dumb, unique things. And if you ever get to play it and you like the PlayStation 1 or the PlayStation 2 and you played some of the first party and even like third party games that mean something to PlayStation fans, that you will be blown away by some of the characters you saw. There were characters that I've run into that I was like, no, that's not. And then I realized it was like, that's exactly who it is. That is that character.
The Playroom though too was like you're sitting there like, oh, I know that character.
Yeah. Yes, it's like that. There's just 100. Yes, I think it might be Black. Yes, Black Myth Wukong is in every part of Astrobot. It's just that over and over again. I don't know how I saw that one comment. That was great, JSJ. But yeah, it's it really is just a fun, great game. And I wish this was part of Sony's objective. I felt like for a while this was part of Microsoft's play, was like, hey, we're going to have a jillion developers, so we're going to make lots of games. And with Sea of Thieves and the games that came out at that time, I did feel like they were trying more and more things. A lot of it didn't land for me. But yeah, I just wish more companies did this, because this is the fun that Nintendo is, right? Like, this is why we like playing Zelda, why we play new Marios.
What do you guys think of the criticisms that are coming from a lot of these publications saying, well, Astrobot has a lot of call outs to, or, it is a love letter to PlayStation, as you said, Brian, but they're talking about how there's not a lot of stuff from this generation of gaming being paid tribute to in.
Well, I think that just speaks about this generation of gaming, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
there's not enough, though. It doesn't seem like there's enough there to play with.
I will say, because I'm almost done with it, and then I'm going to go back and 100% it because it's fun and it's not a very long game. It's probably like 8 hours to finish the main game, and then it's probably 3-4 hours to 100% it. That's what I would guess, right? Like I'm almost done with the first playthrough. I think that they cover every single modern game so far, and I'm assuming there's only like 2 more characters I'm expecting to see that I haven't seen yet from this and last generation, right? They cover all the stuff that you need. And honestly, I do feel like there are parts at the end of each world where you go and visit games, and they definitely lean heavy into the last 2 generations, the last 3, we'll say, right? So for those people who are like, oh, it's not enough about this, one, what is a PS5 game to someone? Was it just Returnal and Ratchet and Clank, Demon Souls? I mean, there's only a handful of them, right? Like, what is a PS5 game? Every game is cross-generational, compatible, right? They're all PS4 Pro games. So those people, I think they just want to complain about everything, right? And I'm there with them when someone makes a bad decision, but when it's like, hey, like if this would have been TM, hey, this is this character, buy this game, and they have links to the game, yeah, that would have been gross. But this isn't that. It's like, hey, here's to figure out this character from a riddle, and you're from like a small like blurb. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's most of the fun with the game too. So do you think this will evolve into, like a bigger franchise? You think this could turn into another like Ratchet and Clank as far as like sequels go?
I mean, Gerald, I apologize. That's just kind of been a back and forth. Do you have, I don't want to keep answering these questions. Do you have any thoughts about Team Asobi and such?
Well, I'll just say this. I think it would be in their best interest to make a sequel to this game. Obviously they started with the tech demo that you can get with the PlayStation 5. With the day that I do get a PlayStation 5, obviously that would be one of the games I would probably want to go after first. But I do think that they will make a sequel to it because of just the sheer fact it's got a 94 on Metacritic right now. Yeah. It may be the game of the year in many publications, if not right there with it. So it's going to be very highly thought of. I was going to say this from an Xbox standpoint. Xbox has nothing like this.
They should. They have Banjo-Kazooie, all the people, right?
Spyro and Crash, yeah.
But it's been 20 some odd years now, and they still haven't figured that out. That they needed something like that. They've stayed away from the platformers. That's something that's been allergic to them as far as having that definable mascot that people can go ahead and relate to. Master Chief, Gears of War, they're all shooters targeted towards a certain demographic, whereas Zelda, Mario, they appeal to a much broader demographic. And this is PlayStation's attempt to say, hey, Astrobot, he may not be a Mario yet, but if we keep on doing these things, that he may be someone 10 years down the line that a new generation of gaming fans may come to realize and love and appreciate and identify with the PlayStation.
Yeah, I echo what Gerald said. I am not concerned. I mean, I will say Team Asobi, because they had the VR game, Astrobot's Rescue Mission, then they had the Astro's Playroom, which kind of led them into this. They have been an Astrobot team now for a bit. So, but before that, they were all over the place. They're making wacky games. I would love a sequel to this game. I hope they make a sequel to this game. It's kind of like how I felt about Mario Odyssey in a lot of ways, where I was like, please give me a 2. Let me play the sequel for this, because I want to play more, right? It's one of those very few games where you end it and you're like, I'm not done. Let me play more. Yeah, I hope they do that. I mean, I just don't know. Team Asobi's a weird one. For all we know, Sony might shutter their doors, right? They closed Sony Japan, which is what Team Asobi was part of. Or was that last year or the beginning of this year?
I think it was the beginning of this year, although
yeah.
There's been so many closures, unfortunately. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah, and between last year, too, is just like a deluge of them. So, yeah, it's hard to know, right? They might just shutter their doors, too, because I as much as I'm loving Astrobot, I'll be real, I don't know how well it will sell, right? And not like I don't think it's going to sell bad. I think it will sell 2, 3, 4 million copies easy. But in a world where like all of these publishers are expecting games to sell 10, 15 million copies, I don't think it's going to hit those metrics, right? Like, I think I'm hoping into the month we hear, hey, it sold 6 million copies, 8 million copies, something like that, right? Like, that would be phenomenal. But I don't think it's going to hit 10, even with the highest Metacritic.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's such a great game.
But it's, you know, it's $10 cheaper than most of their games. It's 60. It's not 70. But it's a platformer, right? Like that's the reason why Microsoft stayed so far away from them. Besides Nintendo, no one has made a successful one in decades. But like you just said, Gerald, it's sad because, you know, I don't have children yet, but like there's no Xbox games for kids. There are games that kids can play on Xbox, but there's not really any Xbox games for children. So and Sony didn't have them either, right? This is a very new thing. They had Astro's Playroom, and now they've got this one. And I guess you could say Ratchet and Clank, but I still think Ratchet and Clank's way too difficult for kids, and there was way too much going on. Yeah. So, anyways, I know we kind of went way over. We didn't even get a chance. We might have to do a 4-peat to get back to what we're doing. There's been a lot of Sony news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there's just been a lot to talk about. I guess a lot more than.
Remember the time we were talking about Concord?
Yeah, let's go back there.
So, we'll come back at it next week and hopefully finish our favorite gaming memories. I'm assuming there won't be a lot of news unless Sony blows up the.
They close Astrobot. You can't play it anymore.
Yeah.
Buy it on eBay.
Concord PS5s. Buy them.
There goes Gerald scouring the electronics department at Target and Walmart.
At Walmart, yep.
Where are you?
All right, my dudes, it's been a pleasure. You guys got any closing thoughts before we skedaddle?
No, sir. This was a blast, my boys. Amen.
Just enjoy your video games, everyone out there.
Enjoy them. You never know when they'll go away. Hug them every day and tell them you love them.
Kiss them goodnight. JSJ, thanks for joining in the chat. It was fun talking, and we'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
Super.